Hey everyone, welcome back. We're up to floor 7 now, so we're getting into the higher levels. This is where the game will most likely start getting a little nasty with us. We're gonna have to start planning very strategically. We're gonna have to lay out our defenses very wisely. And as you can see, we're getting into kind of this strange cult-like area. This is actually one of my favorite areas of the game. Just has a very interesting aesthetic to it. I guess my first sort of reaction to it when I saw this area was it kind of reminded me of, I guess, some of the later levels of Dead Space 1 and sort of the more cult-like themes of Dead Space 2. I know that's kind of a weird comparison, but that's what it made me think of at first, just sort of the large standing statues, candles lit all around, kind of like this weird meshing of, you know, ancient cult-like practices, but within a futuristic sci-fi world. So I think that's kind of neat. Right there, we just leveled up Kensha enough to get her sacrifice ability that does damage to her, and I believe anyone else in the room, per second, but it also does damage to all enemies, so can be useful. If only to whittle everyone in the room down, but it is dangerous to her as well, so you want to keep an eye on her health. You may have to use food on her if you're doing that, and she's taking damage at the same time. Can be just as detrimental to you as it can to your enemies if you're not, you know, keeping aware of it. Anyways, when I was recording the last floor, because I recorded these videos by floor, and as I was commentating last video, the thought crossed my mind right at the end when Opbot dies, as we're just kind of sitting there and holding out. The event of Opbot dying kind of, like, I don't know how to put it, but basically it sort of ruins the canon, I guess, lore and events that happen, because of all the characters in this game, he is the only one who I guess consistently has to survive. You know, because he ends up in endless space later on, like hundreds of years later, even thousands. I don't know how old Opbot is, but yeah, if he dies in this dungeon, then he would never be able to appear in endless space, unless maybe, you know, what happens to him when he dies in here. The animation is actually him kind of like twitching and then he explodes, you know, there's nothing left of him, but I guess visuals aside, maybe he just gets damaged so badly he deactivates, and maybe they find him and reactivate him. I think that actually is mentioned. I think he may be reactivated when he's found in the dungeon, or something along those lines. I don't know if he appears in Endless Legend. I feel like he might, because there might be some mentioning of him, at least, you know, in passing. But he has some cool connections to, you know, the history of the Vaulters, especially since, you know, I guess he was one of the first settling characters on the planet Auriga, where, you know, these two games take place. And right here we have the bulldozer started punching at our major module, but the pepper spray took care of him quite nicely. So I'm just looking at our options right now. Autodock Shards 3 could be decent, but I don't end up ever really using Autodock Shards. I feel like they could be very, very good, but yeah, I just really haven't tried them out enough to be a good judge of that. Like I said last video, though, I've seen some very clever strategies involving Autodock Shards, holding out and using them with some passive abilities that give you, you know, resources per enemies killed. So that could be a good thing, you know. Right here we've got a guy dealing in industry, a merchant dealing in industry. Also notice the pug next to all of the merchants. The pug is actually kind of a, not really running joke, but just a fun little community thing from Amplitude. They have a studio pug, I guess, like a company pet, more or less, and that pug actually appears in a couple of things. He appears prominently as the DJ on the album art for this game's soundtrack, as well as, I believe he's a secret character. If you select random, there's a small chance that he will actually be your, one of your playable characters, one of your heroes. I've never had it happen myself, and I don't think he's able to be unlocked consistently, that you could select him more than once. But it is pretty hilarious that, you know, you can get a pug as one of your heroes, and it's just friggin' adorable. I think a lot of its abilities are supposedly good for an explorer-type character. I don't know if he can operate, but I think he has a lot of dust-based abilities, maybe passives or actives, I don't know. Never played him, so I don't know well enough, but the fact that you can play a pug in this game is pretty amazing. He's more a joke character than anything, because I think he has 0 defense, so, you know, if he gets so much as breathed on, there's a good chance that late game he's gonna die in, like, 1 shot. Which is really sad. I don't want a pug to die, but... It's cool that they have, you know, their company pet featured prominently in one of their games. I think it's pretty entertaining. I remember actually having a lot of trouble deliberating what the best moves were for this floor, just because it had a lot of darkened rooms. Yeah, that whole path off to the left of the room 2 floors, or 2 rooms below us. I was very nervous about that room because it's such a large one, and I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that the density, I guess, you know, the amount of enemies that can spawn in any given room, you know, the amount of waves, I guess, depends on the size of the room. So if it's a small hallway like these, it's probably not going to be a huge amount of enemies. Right there we got, you know, 3-4 guys spawning out of each room, 2 right over there, although one of them is a little more powerful. But they keep destroying my major modules. I'm having some issues with that. That was the other issue. I was trying to avoid that happening. If you place major modules in your outermost defense rooms, there's a good chance they're probably going to get destroyed. But I don't really pay attention to that as much as I should here, and I end up losing a couple, which costs us precious industry, which is unfortunate, but it happens, you know. You can afford to make mistakes, at least as long as you're not on, say, the sanitary pod, which is basically this game's hard mode. That's something that I didn't really explain, is the way that pods change gameplay. The really cool thing about this game is that, depending on how you play it, if you unlock certain achievements, you also unlock pods along with those associated achievements. So, for example... And it also happens if you just beat the game with the most recently unlocked pod. When you beat the game with the escape pod, you automatically unlock the infirmary pod. But beyond that, if you, say, beat the game without losing a single hero, then you unlock the armory pod, which lets you have 4 characters from the beginning of the game. So you can start the game with a full party rather than the usual 2. The infirmary pod, I think, might be unlocked by spending 1,000 points of food towards healing your characters, maybe? I'm not sure if that's the one, but that becomes very easy to unlock when you're actually playing on the infirmary pod, just because you don't regenerate health like you do normally. Like on the escape pod, when we finish a full wave of enemies, our health goes all the way back up, so you can really you can save your food up like that, but in the infirmary pod, you don't regenerate health. They actually deactivate auto-dock shards, specifically so you don't have a room that you can just, you know, run back to regenerate health with. So that's kind of the big challenge in the infirmary pod. I think the benefit is that you get a lot of accessory items that are like these different drugs that can amplify one stat and then kind of take down another one, which I didn't personally find that great. I wasn't a big fan of the infirmary pod, but I think it also gives your heroes more health in general, maybe? I don't know. It's been a while since I played on the infirmary pod, and I don't have the description in front of me, so I don't know for sure, but yeah, each of them has kind of a unique perk. The armory pod, where you start out with a full party, I think it makes your modules weaker, but your party's stronger, so it lets you focus on building a really powerful group of heroes, which kind of scares me, because I've learned to become very reliant on my modules in this game, and the idea of faring without them is a little scary to me. It's a scary concept. It's because without them, I feel like the hordes of enemies you encounter late game become kind of insurmountable by just a party of 4 characters, even if they're very strong. Just the amount of enemies and how many of them are spawning, it's not something I can imagine dealing with. And especially in this run-through where we only have 2 heroes, that even stunts our resource gathering, because we can only have 1 operator at a time. We always need 1 explorer going around. So yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of dynamics that sort of change how you strategize, and the different pod types really exemplify that. In fact, in this particular playthrough, the reason that I'm researching so much, and I am putting down as many science modules as I am, usually I wouldn't put down nearly this many, but in this case I am, because I want to research level 1 of every single module, major and minor. If you do that, you unlock the library pod, and the library pod is very focused on tower defense type gameplay. So it makes I think your characters weaker, but it makes your modules stronger, which is, like, perfect for me. Just based on how I've been playing the game recently, I think that's a really nice approach. And a really cool playstyle that they allow you to have. There's even one pod called the Refrigerator, I think. If you buy Endless Legend and you get the Emperor Pack upgrade, they unlock a hero and a ship. The hero's Krayang, who's a Draken warrior. She's got like a spear, and she's a sort of blue crystal-looking dragon character who's... The Draken are one of the major factions in Endless Legend. I think they're sort of dragon people, as the name would imply, dragon. But yeah, and the Refrigerator pod, which you unlock along with her, gives you only 1 hero, and I don't know if you can find any other heroes, but it makes that hero super powerful, and if they die, then the game allows you to spend food to resurrect them from the crystal room. So that, even in itself, every single pod really changes up gameplay a lot, makes it very unique. Right here we have a lot of bulldozers and zoners just destroying our defense room up there. We're not going to be keeping that science creator. Just really gotta focus on defending our main room right here. That's our choke point. If we lose our choke point, we're in big trouble. But fortunately, we don't have to worry about that. Our defenses are decent enough. But we did lose that one room, so we're gonna have to rebuild some stuff up there. Not necessarily the major modules, though. I don't know if I rebuild those, because at this point we're late enough into the dungeon, I don't know if it would be worth the industry to keep building major modules, especially when we can't necessarily defend them as far down as they are in our defense line. So I'm trying to think if there were any other pods that I missed. Escape pod is just, no major bonuses or negatives to playing on it. It's just your balanced run-of-the-mill pod, so that's what we're playing in right now. With the one caveat that we're only playing with our starting heroes. That's the big challenge for us this run. That's sort of what's mixing things up. Oh, I just remembered the pod that I didn't mention. The drill pod, which is basically this game's endless mode. The drill pod makes it so that you, well, I mean, I just explained it right there. You're playing in endless mode. You never escape the dungeon. There's no way to win drill mode. You just kind of keep going to see how far you can get in it. So that one's kind of cool. I haven't played on it yet. I haven't tried out endless mode, because I feel like a given playthrough of 12 floors in this game can take 4 or 5 hours, as you can tell from the series. Just one playthrough takes up a good amount of your time, so doing an endless playthrough, and there is an achievement associated with getting to floor 24, I think it was. So basically doubling a playthrough, doing 2 playthroughs worth of floors, like that's scary to me. I can't imagine doing that. But maybe one day I'll try that. I don't know. It'll be like a 10-15 hour ordeal. Because it only gets harder and the dungeons get longer. As you can tell, our first floor was pretty short, but the further on we go, the longer these videos are gonna get, and the more we're gonna have to deal with just crazy amounts of enemies. So the game does slow down as you move on, but it's only because it gets more tense and your decisions matter more the further down you get. So yeah, Sanitary Pod. I don't know if I explained that one. Or Drill Pod you unlock. The way you unlock it is by opening every single door in every single floor of the dungeon. If you do that, then you unlock the Drill Pod. Then the Sanitary Pod, the way that you unlock that is by never pausing in a winning game. All these are in winning games, by the way. You have to actually complete the game to unlock the pods, which is scary. And right there I nearly lost Joleri. That was really scary. We could have just lost the run right there. But luckily I pulled her out before things got too crazy. Yeah, shit's hitting the fan right here. We had way too many enemies spawning here, too many bulldozers, too many zoners, and now they're gonna wreak havoc on our crystal, since they're doing area of effect damage. That was one of the scarier parts of this playthrough. Just watching that was a little, heart-wrenching. It's like, oh, they got to the crystal room, no. And Mizi got absolutely clobbered back in that room. Mitzi's an interesting character, just personality-wise. She's actually possessed by a demon on a different dimensional plane. So while she's kind of like a little more mild-mannered, she has this demon, like a legendary warlord from a different dimension, who's constantly like urging her onwards to go and kill and all this fun stuff. And Hikensha and Mizi actually have a story together that's pretty humorous, because Hikensha actually wants to have the demon possess her, because she always wanted a demon warlord to urge her forward into battle. So right here I do something kind of risky. I go on ahead and try and rush the rest of the doors of the dungeon so I can get all of the doors open, get as many resources as I can, and then run, which is what I'm doing right here. Luckily, we ran into a merchant which negated any chances of any enemy spawning. That's the nice thing. If you ever find a hero or a merchant or anything like that, there's, I believe, no chance of enemies spawning. If you find, say, a cryopod or a science machine, I think it might be a lower chance, because sometimes I've had it where I open the science artifact rooms or cryopods and nothing spawns, but I've also had just as many occurrences where enemies do spawn regardless of that. But in my memory, I have never had monsters spawn with the same door opening as a merchant or a hero, so that's nice in its own way. So, did I explain how to unlock the, and I explained how to unlock the drill pod. The sanitary pod is unlocked by never pausing, and that's not like, accessing the menu to save and exit and all that, but there's a pause button that I haven't actually used this playthrough and I'm not going to be using, but you can pause to tactically plan out stuff during battle. If you don't do that, you unlock the sanitary pod, which is basically a harder mode. Anyways, I can't speak anymore because the video is ending, so thanks for watching everybody, take care, and I'll see you next time.